When a billionaire man thinks his wife is just an expensive ornament, he forgets one thing. Never underestimate a woman who knows all your secrets. Tonight, I'll tell you about Serafina Voss, the woman who turned a hellish marriage into the sharpest weapon. This is a story of betrayal, of power, and of how a silent woman can flatten an empire. Watch until the end, and don't forget to leave a comment about the city you're watching in. I want to know how far this story has come. Now, let's begin. The rain didn't stop. It never really stopped in Chicago during October, just traded intensity. Sometimes a drizzle that kissed the pavement, sometimes a downpour that beat the city into submission. Tonight it was the latter, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Blackwell Cafe like it had a grudge. Serafina Voss sat alone at a corner table, her fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup that had gone cold an hour ago. The espresso inside looked like oil now, a dark mirror reflecting the overhead lights. She didn't drink it. She never really came here to drink. She came here to remember what it felt like to be alone without feeling lonely. Every Thursday night, same table, same order, same ritual. For 3 years, this cafe had been her church, her confessional, her one goddamn hour where she didn't have to be Mrs. Damien Crowe, the silent sculpture standing next to one of Chicago's most powerful men. She could just be Serafina. Not that anyone here knew who she really was. The baristas smiled politely and called her Miss instead of Ma'am, which she appreciated more than they'd ever understand. The other customers didn't stare, didn't whisper, didn't care. It was perfect. Until tonight. Through the rain-blurred window, Serafina watched a silver Aston Martin glide to the curb outside. The license plate was custom, CROWE1. Subtle as a sledgehammer, just like everything Damien touched. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be at the club downtown, the one with the overpriced whiskey, and the politicians who crawled to him like dogs. Thursday nights were hers. That was the unspoken agreement. He took the world 6 days a week, and she got 60 minutes to pretend she still existed as something other than his accessory. But there he was, and he wasn't alone. Serafina's breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. She didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as a woman leaned across the center console, blonde, mid-30s, expensive coat, and kissed her husband. Not a quick peck, not a polite goodbye, a real kiss. The kind that lasted, the kind built from familiarity, from routine, from comfort. The woman's hand rested on Damien's jaw like she'd done it 1,000 times before. His fingers curled around her wrist, holding her there, and when they finally pulled apart, Damien smiled. Serafina recognized that smile. She used to be the one who earned it. Her hands didn't shake. That surprised her. She thought maybe they would. Thought maybe her body would betray her with trembling fingers, or a choked sob, or something that looked like weakness. But nothing came. No tears, no rage, no grief. Just a strange, crystalline clarity. She lifted her phone from the table with the same calm she'd used to pick up a fork, unlocked it, opened the camera, pressed record. 12 seconds. That's all she needed. The kiss, the smile, the way Damien's hand lingered on the woman's cheek before she slipped out of the car and disappeared into the rain. 12 seconds of evidence. 12 seconds that would change everything. Serafina set the phone down and stared at the black screen. Her reflection stared back, dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, the kind of face people called striking when they meant too intense. She looked exactly the same as she had an hour ago, but something beneath the surface had shifted. Something old, something patient, something dangerous. Because Damien Crowe, for all his intelligence and power and arrogance, had just made one catastrophic mistake. He'd forgotten whose daughter he married. The penthouse was dark when she got home. Serafina kicked off her heels in the marble foyer and walked barefoot across the cold floor. 42 stories above Chicago, the city lights stretched out like scattered diamonds, indifferent and endless. She used to love this view, used to stand at the windows with a glass of wine and feel like she was floating above the world. Now it just felt like a cage with expensive wallpaper. She didn't turn on the lights, didn't need to. She knew this space by heart. Every corner, every shadow, every inch of the prison she'd decorated herself. The kitchen was spotless. The cleaning service had come that afternoon, erasing every trace of human presence. The granite countertops gleamed. The stainless steel appliances reflected her ghost as she passed. She poured herself a glass of water and stood at the island, listening to the silence. This was her life now. Waiting. Always waiting. Waiting for Damien to come home. Waiting for him to notice her. Waiting for him to remember she was more than furniture. But tonight, she was done waiting. She pulled out her phone and watched the video again. Damien's face in profile. The blonde woman's lips pressed against his. The smile. God, that smile. Serafina's jaw tightened. She wanted to throw the phone across the room, wanted to scream, wanted to do something that would crack the perfect surface she'd spent years polishing. But that wasn't how you survived in Damien Crow's world. You didn't react. You calculated. She saved the video to 3 separate cloud accounts, sent a copy to an encrypted email only she could access, backed it up on a thumb drive she kept hidden behind a row of cookbooks Damien had never once opened. Then she deleted it from her phone's camera roll. Evidence secured, trail erased. Her father's voice echoed in her head, calm and cold. Never react emotionally when someone underestimates you. Let them keep talking while you count the exits. Serafina had spent her entire childhood watching Lucian Vale dismantle men twice his size without raising his voice. He taught her that power wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, wasn't about who could yell the loudest or hit the hardest. Real power was invisible. It was patience. It was knowing exactly where to press until the whole structure collapsed. Damien had no idea what he'd married. He saw a beautiful woman with a quiet demeanor and mistook it for weakness, saw her compliance and called it submission, thought because she didn't fight him, she couldn't. He was wrong. Serafina heard the elevator chime at 11:47 p.m. She didn't move, just stood in the dark kitchen with her water glass and waited. The penthouse door opened, closed. Damien's footsteps echoed across the marble, confident, unhurried. The walk of a man who owned everything he touched. He didn't call out for her, didn't check to see if she was home, just walked straight to the bar in the living room and poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. Serafina watched from the shadows. He looked good. He always looked good. Tailored suit, perfect hair, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. 6 years ago, she'd fallen in love with that face, thought the man behind it was worth the risk. She'd been wrong about that too. Damien loosened his tie and sank into the leather armchair facing the windows. He didn't turn on the lights, just sat there in the dark, drinking, staring out at the city like a king surveying his kingdom. Serafina stepped into the living room. "You're late," she said quietly. Damien didn't flinch, didn't even turn his head. Meeting ran long. Must have been important. It was. Lies came so easily to him now. He used to stumble over them in the beginning, back when he still cared about getting caught. But 6 years of marriage had turned him into an expert. Serafina moved closer, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "I made dinner. It's in the fridge if you're hungry." "I ate already." "With clients?" "Yeah." "Anyone I know?" Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were flat, bored, the way you'd look at a painting you'd seen too many times. "Why are you interrogating me, Sarah?" She hated when he called her that. It sounded like an insult coming from his mouth. "I'm not," she said. "Just making conversation." "Well, don't." He turned back to the window. "I've had a long day. I don't need you adding to it." Something sharp twisted in her chest. Not pain. Not anymore. Just acknowledgement. This was who he was now. This was what their marriage had become. Serafina walked to the bar and poured herself a glass of wine. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. "You know what's funny, Damien?" "What?" "I used to think you needed me." He laughed. Short, cruel. "Need you? For what?" "I don't know. Company, partnership, love maybe." "Love." He said the word like it tasted bad. "We're not children, Sarah. This is business. Always has been. You get to live like a queen, and I get a wife who looks good at events. That's the deal. And if I wanted more than that, then you married the wrong man." The words hung between them like smoke. Serafina took a slow sip of wine, letting the silence stretch. Her father had taught her this too. When someone showed you who they really were, you didn't argue. You didn't cry. You didn't try to change their mind. You just listened, and you remembered. "You're right," she said finally. "I probably did." Damien smiled, satisfied. He thought he'd won, thought he'd put her back in her place. "You're nothing without me, Sarah. Don't forget that." She didn't respond, just finished her wine and set the glass down carefully on the marble countertop. Good night, Damien. She walked to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. And then she sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, pulled out the burner phone she kept hidden in her nightstand, and typed a single message to her father. I need to see you tomorrow. It's time. The Vale estate sat 2 hours north of Chicago, hidden behind iron gates and ancient oak trees that looked like they'd been standing since the earth was young. Serafina drove herself, windows down despite the cold, letting the October air sting her face and clear her head. She hadn't been back here in months. Damien hated when she visited her father, said Lucien made him uncomfortable with those pale gray eyes that seemed to see straight through skin and bone. Good, Serafina thought. He should be uncomfortable. The driveway curved through manicured gardens that had gone dormant for winter. The main house rose ahead, all stone and dark wood, more fortress than home. Her mother used to joke that Lucien had built it to keep the world out. Turned out she was right about that too. Serafina parked near the front steps and killed the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house she'd grown up in. She hadn't cried yet. Not when she saw Damien kiss that woman, not when he told her she was nothing without him. Not during the entire 2-hour drive, but sitting here, looking at her childhood home, she felt something crack. Not grief. Relief. She was home. The front door opened before she could knock. Marcus, her father's assistant for the last 20 years, stood in the doorway, 60-something, silver-haired, the kind of man who could kill you 6 different ways and still have time to pour you tea afterward. Miss Vale, he said quietly. Always Vale, never Crow. He's waiting for you in the study. Serafina stepped inside. The house smelled like leather and old books and wood smoke. Memories pressed in from every corner, her mother's laugh echoing from the kitchen, her own footsteps running up the stairs as a child, her father's voice reading to her in the library. This was the world she'd left to marry Damien. She'd been an idiot. The study was at the back of the house, overlooking the frozen lake. Lucien Vale stood at the window with his hands clasped behind his back, his silhouette sharp against the gray afternoon light. He didn't turn when she entered. Didn't need to. You're late, he said. Traffic. You're never late. Even in traffic. Serafina closed the door behind her. I stopped for coffee. Now he turned. Lucien Vale was 63 years old and looked like he'd been carved from marble, all sharp edges and cold lines. His hair had gone silver years ago, but his eyes were still the same pale gray they'd always been, the kind of eyes that made powerful men nervous. He studied his daughter for a long moment. You haven't been sleeping, he said. No. And Damien? Sleeping fine, I imagine. He usually does. Lucien's mouth tightened. He'd never liked Damien, never trusted him, had tried to talk her out of the marriage 6 years ago. But Serafina had been 26 and in love and convinced she knew better. Youth made you stupid like that. Sit, Lucien said, gesturing to the mahogany table that dominated the center of the room. Serafina set her bag on the table and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed photographs, bank statements, copies of property deeds, handwritten notes, 3 months of careful investigation she'd conducted in secret, and the thumb drive with the video. She spread everything across the table like a crime scene. Lucien moved closer, his eyes scanning the documents without touching them. Serafina watched his face, looking for any flicker of reaction. Nothing. He was too good for that. How long? He asked. The affair? I'm not sure. At least a year, maybe longer. And you waited 3 months to tell me. I needed to be sure. You're always sure. He picked up one of the bank statements, studying it. What made you wait? Serafina took a breath. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was looking for problems that didn't exist. And now? Now I know I wasn't wrong. Lucien set down the paper and looked at her. Really looked at her. What do you want, Serafina? It was the question she'd been asking herself for 3 months. What did she want? Revenge? Closure? An apology? No. None of those things. I want out, she said. But I want him to understand what he's lost. I want him to know that I wasn't weak. I was patient. There's a difference. Lucien nodded slowly. Then he reached for the thumb drive. May I? Serafina pushed it across the table. He plugged it into his laptop and watched the video in silence. 12 seconds. The kiss, thus. The smile. The intimacy. When it ended, he closed the laptop and sat back in his chair. "Do you know who she is?" he asked. "Her name is Vivian Mercer. She works in finance. I think she does consulting for his company." "You think, or you know?" "I know. I just haven't confirmed how deep it goes yet." Lucian was quiet for a moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Serafina recognized that look. It was the same expression he wore right before he destroyed someone's entire world. "I'll make some calls," he said finally, quietly. "See what we're really dealing with." "How long will that take?" "A few days, maybe less." He leaned forward. "But I need you to understand something, Serafina. If we start this, there's no going back. Damien will fight. He'll get ugly. And when men like him get cornered, they burn everything around them just to stay warm." "I know." "Do you? Because once we open this door—" "I know, Dad." The word hung between them. She hadn't called him that in years, not since she'd become Mrs. Crow and tried so hard to fit into Damien's world that she'd forgotten where she came from. Lucian's expression softened, just barely. "All right then. We'll do this the right way. Carefully. Completely. And when we're done, Damien Crow will understand exactly what it means to underestimate a veil." Serafina felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, not quite, but purpose. She stood up. "I should get back before he notices I'm gone." "Stay for dinner. Let him wonder." "I can't. Not yet. He can't suspect anything." Lucien walked her to the door. As she reached for her coat, he caught her wrist, gently, the way he used to when she was small and about to do something reckless. "Serafina." She looked up at him. "You're not nothing," he said quietly. "You never were. I'm sorry I let you forget that." Her throat tightened. She nodded once, not trusting her voice, and walked out into the cold afternoon. The drive back to Chicago felt longer than it should have. Serafina's mind raced, spinning through possibilities and contingencies and worst-case scenarios. She thought about the offshore accounts she'd discovered buried in Damien's files, the shell companies, the property holdings listed under names she didn't recognize. 6 years of marriage had taught her how to navigate Damien's world, how to smile at the right people, how to stay silent when powerful men spoke, how to be invisible when she needed to be. But it had also taught her where he kept his secrets. Damien was careful, paranoid even. But he'd made one crucial miscalculation. He'd assumed his wife was decorative, not observant. He'd left his office unlocked when he worked from home. He'd taken phone calls in front of her about private business deals. He'd kept files on the shared drive because he didn't think she knew how to access them. For 3 years, Serafina had cataloged every mistake, every oversight, every moment of arrogance that made him careless. She'd been building a map of his empire without even realizing it, and now she knew exactly where to burn it down. By the time she pulled into the parking garage beneath their building, dusk had settled over Chicago like a bruise. She rode the elevator up in silence, rehearsing the mask she'd wear when she walked through the door. Calm, compliant, bored. Mrs. Damien Crow, the perfect wife. The penthouse was lit when she entered. Damien stood at the bar, already on his second drink, his tie discarded on the couch. "Where were you?" he asked without looking up. "Shopping." "For 6 hours?" "I had lunch, got my nails done, the usual." He glanced at her hands. She'd actually gotten her nails done 2 days ago, but Damien wouldn't remember that. He never looked at her closely enough to remember details. "You smell like cigarettes," he said. The nail salon was next to a bar. People were smoking outside. Lie, easy, casual. Damien seemed satisfied. He poured himself another drink and moved toward the bedroom. "I've got calls tonight. Don't wait up." "I won't." He paused at the doorway, something flickering across his face. Annoyance, maybe, or suspicion. "You've been weird lately." "Weird how?" "I don't know. Quiet." Serafina almost laughed. She'd been quiet their entire marriage. He was only noticing now because he was starting to feel the ground shift beneath his feet. "I'm fine," she said. "Just tired." "Well, get some sleep. You look like hell." He disappeared into the bedroom and closed the door. Serafina stood alone in the living room, listening to his muffled voice as he started his phone calls. Business. Always business. She walked to the window and pressed her palm against the cold glass. Somewhere out there, her father was making calls of his own, activating networks, pulling threads, setting everything in motion. And in a few days, maybe a week, Damien's carefully constructed world would start to crumble. He just didn't know it yet. Serafina smiled at her reflection in the dark glass. Patience. That's all this required. Patience. 3 days later, Lucienne called. Serafina took the call in the penthouse bathroom with the shower running, her voice low and careful. Tell me, she said. It's worse than you thought. Her stomach dropped. How much worse? Vivian Mercer isn't just his mistress. She's laundering money for him. Has been for almost 2 years. Serafina closed her eyes. Laundering. Offshore accounts. Shell companies in Delaware and Nevada. He's been moving assets out of reach, yours and his, preparing for something. Maybe a divorce he was planning to initiate on his terms. Maybe just protecting himself from creditors. Creditors? His shipping company is drowning, Serafina. He's leveraged to the throat. The only thing keeping him afloat is one logistics contract with a transportation conglomerate out of Detroit. If that contract disappears, his entire operation collapses. Serafina's mind spun. This was bigger than an affair. This was criminal. Can you make the contract disappear? She asked. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, yes. How long? 48 hours. Maybe less. But Serafina, once I do this, there's no stopping what comes next. The collapse will be public. Federal investigators will get involved. Damien will know someone is coming for him. Good, she said. Let him know. Let him panic. Let him tear his own world apart looking for the enemy. And when he figures out it's you? Serafina thought about the way Damien had looked at her last night, right through her, like she was glass. He won't, she said. Because he still doesn't believe I'm capable of this. Then we move forward. We move forward. Lucienne hung up. Serafina turned off the shower and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked calm, composed, but beneath the surface, something ancient and patient had finally woken up, and it was hungry. The first crack appeared on a Monday morning. Serafina was sitting at the kitchen island with her coffee and a book she wasn't really reading when Damien's phone started ringing. Once, twice, 3 times in a row. He answered on the 4th call, his voice sharp with irritation. What? Then his face changed. Serafina watched over the rim of her cup as the color drained from his cheeks. His jaw tightened. His free hand curled into a fist on the counter. What do you mean terminated? He said. We had a 5-year contract. They can't just... He listened. She could hear the tinny voice on the other end, too fast and panicked for her to make out words. Damien slammed his fist on the granite. Find out who. Find out now. I don't care what it costs. He hung up and stood there, breathing hard, staring at nothing. Serafina didn't look up from her book. Everything okay? No. Everything is not okay. What happened? Nothing you need to worry about. He grabbed his jacket and his keys. I'll be at the office. Don't wait up. It's barely 8 in the morning. I said don't wait up. He was gone before she could respond. Serafina set down her book and smiled into her coffee. The blade had found its mark. Now came the bleeding. The office became Damien's tomb. He stopped coming home at reasonable hours. Some nights he didn't come home at all. Serafina would wake at 3 in the morning to find his side of the bed untouched, the sheet still smooth and cold. She didn't call him, didn't text, didn't ask where he was. She just waited and watched and documented everything. By Wednesday, the cracks had spread. Damien's phone rang constantly. Lawyers, accountants, business partners, all of them demanding answers he didn't have. She could hear the edge in his voice even when he tried to hide it, that brittle quality that came from a man who was used to control suddenly realizing he had none. Thursday morning, she found him in the living room at dawn, still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at his laptop screen like it held the secrets of the universe. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw was dark with stubble, his hand shook slightly as he reached for his coffee. Serafina had never seen him look this way. Damien Crowe was always polished, always composed, always the predator in the room. Now he looked like prey. Coffee's cold, she said from the doorway. He didn't look up. I know. Want me to make fresh? No. She walked into the kitchen anyway, moving quietly through the morning routine. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled. The smell of dark roast filled the air. Outside, Chicago was waking up. Traffic sounds, distant sirens, the low hum of a city that never really slept. Damien appeared in the kitchen doorway like a ghost. Did you touch my files? Serafina paused mid-pour. What files? The ones in my office. Someone accessed them, changed permissions, moved things around. Why would I touch your files? I don't even know your password. Don't lie to me, Sarah. She turned to face him, the coffee pot still in her hand. Her expression was perfectly neutral. I'm not lying. I don't go in your office. You've made it very clear that's your space. Damien stared at her like he was trying to see through her skull and into her brain, looking for the lie, searching for proof. He wouldn't find it. Serafina had been too careful. Every time she'd accessed his files, she'd covered her tracks, used VPNs, cleared browser histories, made it look like the access came from his own devices, not hers. Her father had taught her that too. When you steal from someone, make sure they blame themselves for losing it. Maybe you made a mistake, she said quietly. You've been distracted lately, stressed. It happens. I don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Damien. His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might grab her, might shake her, might finally do something that proved what she'd suspected for years, that beneath the expensive suits and polished exterior, Damien Crowe was just another man who solved problems with his fists when his brain failed him. But he didn't. He just turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood. The front door slammed. Serafina set down the coffee pot and realized her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. This was working. Damien was unraveling, pulling at threads, looking for enemies in all the wrong places. And the more he searched, the more paranoid he'd become, until he couldn't tell the difference between real threats and shadows. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Package delivered. Check your email. She opened her laptop and found the attachment. Financial records, transaction histories, proof that Vivian Mercer had been moving Damien's money through offshore accounts for 18 months. And more importantly, proof that those accounts had been established before Serafina and Damien's marriage began to fall apart. He'd been planning this from the start. The affairs, the cruelty, the slow erosion of their relationship. All of it had been deliberate. He'd never loved her. He just needed a wife who looked good in photographs, while he systematically dismantled their lives and rebuilt his empire in places she couldn't reach. Serafina closed the laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to drive to Damien's office and show him the records and watch his face as he realized she knew everything. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required patience, so she took a breath, then another, and another. And then she got dressed, put on her most expensive coat, and went to meet her father for lunch. Lucien had chosen a restaurant in the financial district, one of those places where the walls were glass and chrome and the clientele wore suits worth more than most people's cars. Serafina hated it on principle, but she understood the choice. They needed to be seen, needed witnesses, needed people who would remember that Serafina Vale had been having lunch with her father at exactly 1:15 p.m. when Damien's world started to collapse. Lucien was already seated when she arrived, a glass of sparkling water in front of him, his pale eyes scanning the room like a hawk looking for field mice. "You're late," he said. "Traffic was a nightmare." "You're never late, even in traffic." Serafina slid into the chair across from him. "Today I am. Deal with it." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "You sound like your mother." Good. She was right about most things. A waiter appeared with menus and a wine list. Serafina ordered a glass of white without looking at the price. Lucien ordered nothing. He never ate during business meetings. When the waiter left, Lucien leaned forward slightly. "Did you read the files?" "I did." "And?" "And you were right. He's been planning this for years." "Does it change anything?" Serafina thought about that. Did it change anything? Knowing that Damien had never really loved her? That their entire marriage had been a calculated move on his part? "No," she said finally. "It just makes this easier." Lucien nodded. "Good. Because the next phase is going to require you to be completely certain. Once the federal investigators start asking questions, there's no going back." "I'm certain. Are you?" "Because if you have any hesitation, any doubt at all, we stop now. We take what we have, file for divorce, and walk away. You'll still get half of what's legally yours." "Half of nothing isn't much." "It's better than being caught in the middle of a federal investigation." Serafina picked up her wine glass and studied the pale gold liquid inside. "What happens if I'm not just a witness? What if they think I was involved?" "They won't. You have alibis for everything. Financial records showing separate accounts. Emails proving you questioned suspicious activity. And most importantly, you have me. If federal investigators come asking questions, they'll have to go through an army of lawyers first. And Damien? Damien will have no one. His partners are already distancing themselves. His lawyers are overextended. And once Vivian realizes he's going down, she'll turn on him to save herself. You're sure about that? She's already cooperating. Serafina's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. What? Lucien's expression didn't change. I reached out to her 3 days ago, quietly, through intermediaries, explained the situation, showed her the evidence we had, gave her a choice, go down with Damien or help us bury him. And she chose to save herself. She's provided additional documentation, recorded phone calls, text messages, everything. Serafina set down her glass carefully. Her hands wanted to shake again. You didn't tell me you were contacting her. Because you would have tried to stop me. Damn right I would have. What if she told Damien? She didn't. She's smarter than that. And more importantly, she's terrified. Vivian Mercer thought she was moving money for a shipping company. She didn't realize she was laundering assets stolen from a marriage. Once I explained the legal exposure she was facing, wire fraud, conspiracy, aiding in the concealment of marital property, she couldn't cooperate fast enough. Serafina felt something cold settle in her chest. Jesus Christ, Dad. This is what you wanted. I wanted him exposed. I didn't want... She stopped herself, took a breath. I didn't want someone else hurt. Vivian Mercer made her choices. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She just didn't care until there were consequences. Lucien's eyes were ice. Don't waste sympathy on people who wouldn't waste it on you. The waiter returned with appetizers neither of them had ordered. Some kind of tuna tartare with microgreens that probably cost $40. Serafina stared at her plate and felt her appetite die. How long? She asked. Until what? Until everything falls apart. Lucien checked his watch. Federal investigators should be serving warrants at Damien's office right about now. They'll freeze his accounts, seize his records, bring him in for questioning. And you know this because I've been coordinating with them for the past week, quietly, through channels. Serafina looked at her father like she was seeing him for the first time. This man who had raised her, who had taught her chess and negotiation tactics and how to read a room, who had held her when her mother died and told her that grief was just love with nowhere to go. This man was capable of destroying people with the same clinical precision he used to prune roses. And right now, he was using that precision to dismantle her husband. For her. Thank you, she said quietly. Lucien's expression softened, just barely. You're my daughter. This is what we do. Serafina's phone buzzed, then buzzed again and again. 7 missed calls from Damien, 3 voicemails. She didn't check them, just silenced the phone and slipped it back into her purse. He's going to know, she said. Not yet. Right now he's just panicking, trying to figure out what's happening. It'll be days before he connects the dots, maybe weeks. And when he does, by then it won't matter. He'll be too buried to fight back. Serafina nodded, picked up her fork, put it back down. She couldn't eat, couldn't think, could barely breathe. This was really happening. After 6 years of silence and submission and slowly disappearing into Damien's shadow, she was finally fighting back and winning. So why did it feel like she was drowning? By the time Serafina got home, the sun was setting and her phone had 17 missed calls. She parked in the garage and sat in the car with the engine off, staring at the concrete wall in front of her. Part of her wanted to drive away, keep driving, disappear into some small town where nobody knew her name and she could start over as someone else. But that wasn't an option. Not yet. She rode the elevator up in silence, her reflection staring back at her from the mirrored walls. She looked tired, drawn, like she'd been running for miles and had just realized she was only halfway there. The penthouse door was unlocked. That was the first sign something was wrong. Damien never left the door unlocked. He was paranoid about security, had cameras, alarms, codes that changed monthly. Serafina pushed the door open slowly. The living room was dark except for the city lights bleeding through the windows. Furniture cast long shadows across the floor. Everything looked normal, except for the glass. Shattered crystal covered the hardwood near the bar. A bottle of scotch lay on its side, amber liquid pooling around it like blood. Damien? No answer. She stepped inside, careful not to cut herself on the broken glass. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The apartment felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Damien, are you here? A sound from the bedroom. Muffled, desperate. She moved toward it, her hand already reaching for her phone. The bedroom door was open. Damien sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. His suit jacket was on the floor. His shirt was unbuttoned. And when he looked up at her, his eyes were wild, red-rimmed and furious and completely unhinged. "Where were you?" he said. "I had lunch with my father. For 6 hours. We went shopping after." "Bullshit." Serafina stayed in the doorway, kept distance between them. "What happened? What happened?" Damien laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "Federal agents showed up at my office today, seized everything. Computers, files, client lists, froze my accounts, all of them. Said I'm under investigation for wire fraud and money laundering." "That's insane." "Is it?" He stood up, moved toward her. "Because someone told them exactly where to look. Someone gave them account numbers, transaction dates, offshore holdings. Someone who had access to information that should have been impossible to access." Serafina's pulse quickened. "You think I did this?" "I think someone did, and I think they got close to me to do it." "Damien, I don't know anything about your business dealings. You've made sure of that for 6 years. Then explain how federal investigators have records I kept encrypted, files I never showed anyone, transactions I didn't even keep paper trails for." "Maybe someone at your company?" "No." He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could smell the scotch on his breath. "Everyone at my company is loyal. They've been with me for years. The only person who had access to everything was you. I never touched your files." "Liar." "I'm not." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to hold her in place. Serafina's blood went cold. "Let go," she said quietly. "Not until you tell me the truth." "I am telling you the truth." "You're lying. You've been lying for weeks, maybe months. I can see it in your eyes. What you see is a woman who's tired of being treated like furniture." Serafina pulled her wrist free. "You want to know why federal agents are investigating you? Maybe it's because you've been breaking the law. Ever think of that?" "I've been careful. I've covered every angle." "Apparently not careful enough." Damien's jaw worked. She could see the gears turning behind his eyes, trying to figure out if she was really this stupid or just an incredible actress. She needed him to believe the former. "Get out," he said. "This is my home too." "I said get out. Go back to your father's house. Stay there until I fix this." "And if you can't fix it?" "Then I guess we're both fucked." Serafina grabbed her overnight bag from the closet, threw in clothes without looking at them. Toiletries, her laptop, the burner phone hidden in her nightstand. Damien watched from the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. When she had everything, she walked past him without a word. "Sarah." She stopped, didn't turn around. "If I find out you had anything to do with this," he said quietly, "I will destroy you. Do you understand? I will burn your entire world down and make sure you have nothing left." Serafina looked back at him over her shoulder. "You already did that, Damien, years ago. You just didn't notice." She walked out and didn't look back. The drive north felt longer this time. Serafina's hand shook on the steering wheel. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts that fogged the windshield. She had to pull over twice just to get herself under control. This was real now, not just planning, not just theoretical revenge. Real. Damien knew something was wrong. He didn't know what yet. Didn't know it was her, didn't know about her father, didn't know about Vivian's cooperation, but he knew someone had come for him. And eventually, he'd figure out who. By the time she reached the Vale estate, it was past midnight. The house was dark except for a single light in the study. Her father's silhouette moved behind the curtains. Marcus met her at the door, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Vale, your room is ready." "Is he awake?" "He's been waiting for you." Serafina found Lucien exactly where she expected, standing at the window overlooking the frozen lake, a glass of brandy in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "How bad?" "He knows something's wrong, doesn't know what yet, but he's looking." "Did he hurt you?" "No, just scared me." Now Lucien turned, his eyes swept over her, cataloging every detail. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Sit down." Serafina collapsed into one of the leather chairs. Her legs felt like water. Her chest ached. Everything hurt. Lucien poured her a brandy and pressed the glass into her hands. "Drink." She did. The alcohol burned, going down sharp and clean. He grabbed my wrist, she said quietly. Lucien's expression went flat. Hard? Hard enough. Where is he now? At the penthouse. He kicked me out, told me to come here. Good. That makes this easier. Serafina looked up at him. Makes what easier? We're accelerating the timeline. I'm making calls tonight. By morning, every business partner Damien has will know he's under federal investigation. His credit lines will be cut. His investors will panic. And his shipping company will default on its loans by end of business tomorrow. Dad, no, listen to me. Lucien crouched in front of her, his hands on the arms of her chair. Damien threatened you, physically grabbed you. That changes everything. I won't have you going back there. I won't risk him escalating. He won't. You don't know that. Men like Damien, when they're cornered, when they're desperate, they become dangerous in ways you can't predict. Serafina thought about the look in Damien's eyes, the wildness, the barely controlled rage. Her father was right. Okay, she said. What do we do? You stay here. Don't go back to that apartment. Don't answer his calls. Let me handle everything from here. And if he comes looking for me? He won't get past the gate. Serafina believed him. Her father had built this estate like a fortress. Guards, security systems, protocols. Damien wouldn't get within 100 yards of her, but that didn't make her feel safer. If anything, it made her feel more trapped. 3 days passed in a blur. Serafina stayed in her childhood bedroom on the second floor, watching through the windows as winter settled over the estate. Snow fell in fits and starts. The lake froze solid. The world turned white and silent. Her phone rang constantly. Damien, his lawyers, people from his office she didn't recognize. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she watched the news. Every channel was covering it. The collapse of Crow Maritime, federal investigations, frozen accounts, default proceedings, business partners scrambling to distance themselves. Damien's face was everywhere. Press conferences, courtroom steps, paparazzi catching him leaving his lawyer's office looking haggard and desperate. The media called it a stunning fall from grace. Serafina called it justice. On the fourth day, her father knocked on her door. You have a visitor. Serafina's stomach dropped. Who? Vivian Mercer. That was the last name she expected. She found Vivian in the library, standing near the fireplace with her hands clasped in front of her like a schoolgirl about to be scolded. She looked different than she had in the car that night, smaller, tired, scared. Serafina closed the door behind her. Why are you here? To apologize. I don't want your apology. I know, but you deserve one anyway. Vivian took a shaky breath. I didn't know he was married. Not at first. By the time I found out, I was already in too deep. He told me you two had an arrangement, that you didn't care. I believed him because I wanted to. And the money laundering? He said it was legal, offshore holdings for tax purposes. I didn't ask questions because he paid me well not to. Serafina moved closer. You slept with my husband, helped him hide assets, and now you want forgiveness? No. I want you to know I'm cooperating fully with the federal investigation. I'm giving them everything, every transaction, every conversation, every lie he told. Vivian's voice cracked. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure he pays for it. Why? Because when the agents showed up, Damien tried to blame everything on me, said I was acting alone, that he had no idea what I was doing with his accounts. Vivian's eyes were hard now, angry. He threw me under the bus without blinking, so I'm returning the favor. Serafina studied the other woman, saw the same thing she'd seen in her own reflection 3 months ago, someone who'd been used and discarded and was finally fighting back. Good, Serafina said. Burn him. Vivian nodded once. Then she turned to leave. At the door, she paused. He's going to figure out it was you eventually. I know. And when he does, he's going to come for you. Let him try. Vivian looked at her for a long moment, then smiled grimly. You're scarier than he is. I hope you know that. She left. Serafina stood alone in the library, staring at the flames in the fireplace. Scarier than Damien. Maybe. Or maybe just more patient. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Serafina had been asleep, the first real sleep she'd had in days, when her phone started vibrating on the nightstand. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end, then, I know it was you. Damien. His voice was raw, destroyed. The voice of a man who'd lost everything and finally figured out why. Serafina sat up in bed, her heart pounding. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I know, Sarah. I know what you did. You and your father, you destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. Bullshit. This was coordinated, planned. Someone fed information to federal agents. Someone turned Vivian against me. Someone made my contracts disappear. He laughed bitterly. Someone who had access to everything. Someone I trusted. You never trusted me. You just underestimated me. Silence. Then, why? Because you told me I was nothing without you, and I needed you to understand how wrong you were. So you ruined my life. No. I just showed everyone what you really were. You ruined your own life, Damien. I just handed you the shovel. More silence. She could hear him breathing, could picture him wherever he was, probably drunk, probably alone, probably surrounded by the wreckage of his empire. I'm going to make you pay for this, he said quietly. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. You're going to wish you never crossed me. I already wished that, 6 years ago when I married you. She hung up, and then she sat in the dark, shaking, waiting for her heart to slow down. He knew. Damien finally knew. And there was no going back from this. The war had entered its final phase, and only one of them was going to survive it. The morning after Damien's call, Serafina woke to the sound of her father's voice in the hallway outside her room, low, urgent, the tone he used when something had gone catastrophically wrong. She pulled on a robe and opened the door. Lucien stood with his phone pressed to his ear, his face carved from stone. When he saw her, he ended the call without saying goodbye. We have a problem, he said. Serafina's stomach turned to ice. What kind of problem? Get dressed. Meet me in the study. 5 minutes. He was gone before she could ask anything else. She threw on clothes with shaking hands, jeans, sweater. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had Damien filed a countersuit? Had he found evidence linking her to the federal investigation? Had something happened to one of the witnesses? The study was freezing when she entered. Someone had forgotten to stoke the fire, and the room held the kind of cold that sank into your bones and stayed there. Lucien stood at his desk with papers spread across the surface like a crime scene. Marcus was there too, his expression grim. Close the door, Lucien said. Serafina did. What happened? Her father looked at her with something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Damien filed an emergency motion this morning, Lucien said, claiming you and I conspired to defraud him, that we orchestrated the entire investigation as a vendetta, that we planted evidence and bribed witnesses. That's insane. He has no proof. He has Vivian. The room tilted. What? Vivian Mercer recanted her testimony last night, told federal investigators she was coerced into cooperating with us, that we threatened her, paid her, manipulated her into turning against Damien. Serafina couldn't breathe. That's not true. She came to us. She wanted to cooperate. I know that. You know that. But now she's saying something different. Lucien picked up one of the papers. According to her new statement, I approached her 2 months ago, offered her $2 million to fabricate evidence against Damien, told her if she didn't cooperate, I'd make sure she went to prison. Why would she do this? Because Damien got to her first. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice flat. He must have offered her something. Money, immunity, protection. Something big enough to make her flip. Serafina sat down hard in the nearest chair. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. This couldn't be happening. Vivian had been their strongest witness. She had the transaction records, the emails, the recorded phone calls proving Damien orchestrated everything. Without her, the entire case collapsed. Can they prove she's lying? Serafina asked. Eventually, maybe, but it'll take time. And in the meantime, the narrative has shifted. The media is already running with it. Lucien turned his laptop toward her. The headlines made her sick. Billionaire's wife orchestrates revenge scheme. Federal investigation compromised by family vendetta. Did Lucien Vale frame Damien Crowe? Her own face stared back at her from a dozen different websites. Society photos, charity events, pictures of her standing next to Damien looking elegant and composed. They'd made her into a villain. This is unbelievable, she whispered. It's strategic, Lucien said. Damien's lawyers are good. They're reframing the entire investigation as a personal attack rather than legitimate law enforcement, and it's working. What do? We fight back. We have our own evidence, bank records, property documents, proof that Damien was moving assets long before we got involved. Will it be enough? Lucian didn't answer right away. That told her everything she needed to know. I don't know, he said finally. Vivian's testimony was supposed to be the cornerstone. Without it, we're vulnerable. Serafina stood up and walked to the window. Outside, snow was falling again, thick and heavy, the kind that buried everything. He's not going to stop, she said. Even if we win this motion, even if we prove Vivian is lying, Damien's going to keep coming. He's going to drag us through every court in the country until one of us breaks. I know. So what do? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then, we give him what he wants. Serafina turned. What? We offer a settlement. Drop everything. Return what assets we can. Walk away. Absolutely not. Serafina, no. I didn't go through all of this just to surrender now. Damien doesn't deserve mercy. This isn't about mercy. It's about survival. If this goes to trial, if a judge believes Vivian's new story, you could be charged with conspiracy, with obstruction of justice. You could go to prison. The words hung in the air like smoke. Prison. For trying to escape a man who'd spent 6 years destroying her. That's not fair, she said. No, it's not. But fairness doesn't matter in situations like this. Power does. And right now, Damien has the better position. Serafina wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to tear the entire world apart with her bare hands. Instead, she just stood there shaking while snow continued falling outside. I need air, she said. She left before her father could stop her. Yeah. The gardens were buried under 6 inches of fresh snow. Serafina walked through them anyway, her boots crunching with each step, her breath coming out in white clouds. She'd been so careful, so patient. She'd documented everything, covered her tracks, built an airtight case against Damien, and he'd destroyed it all with a single phone call to Vivian Mercer. How much had he offered her? $1 million? $5 million? Did it even matter? Vivian had looked Serafina in the eye 4 days ago and promised to burn Damien to the ground, and now she'd turned around and handed him a match to burn them instead. Serafina's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but some sick part of her knew who it was. What do you want, Damien? Just calling to see how you're doing. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who'd just won. I imagine you've seen the news by now. Go to hell. I tried that, didn't like it, so I decided to bring you with me instead. Vivian's lying. Is she? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and your father tried to frame me. Bribed witnesses, fabricated evidence, federal crimes, Sarah, the kind that come with prison sentences. We didn't fabricate anything. You know that. I know you destroyed my life, and now I'm returning the favor. He paused. How does it feel? Being the one with no way out? Serafina's grip tightened on the phone. I'm not done fighting. Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet. His voice dropped lower. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop all charges. You're going to issue a public apology, and you're going to sign a settlement agreement returning everything you took. And if I don't, then I'll make sure you spend the next decade in court battles. I'll sue you for defamation, for fraud, for emotional distress. I'll drag your name through every newspaper and website until nobody remembers Serafina Vale as anything other than a vindictive woman who tried to destroy her husband. You already destroyed me. No, I just stopped pretending to love you. There's a difference. The line went dead. Serafina stood in the snow staring at her phone, feeling something inside her crack. Not grief, not rage. Something worse. Doubt. What if they couldn't win this? What if Damien really was going to walk away clean while she took the fall? What if patience and planning weren't enough? She walked back toward the house on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Inside, she found her father in the same position she'd left him, standing at his desk, staring at papers that didn't have answers. He called, she said. Lucien looked up. And? And he wants us to surrender, drop everything, apologize publicly. What did you tell him? Nothing. I hung up. Her father nodded slowly. Then he did something she hadn't seen him do in 20 years. He sat down. Not in his chair, just on the edge of the desk, like his legs had given out. "Dad?" "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "What are you talking about?" "I underestimated him. I thought Damien was just another arrogant businessman, someone we could outmaneuver with better information and stronger connections. I was wrong." "You weren't wrong. He's a survivor, and survivors are dangerous because they have nothing left to lose." Lucian looked at her. "I put you in danger. I should have seen this coming. This isn't your fault, isn't it? I pushed you to go after him. I activated my network. I made the calls that brought federal investigators into this. And now you're the one facing consequences." Serafina moved closer. "I asked for your help. I wanted this. You wanted justice. What you got was war." The study door opened. Marcus stepped in, his phone in his hand. "We have another problem." Lucian stood. "What now?" "Damien's lawyers just filed a restraining order against both of you, claiming you pose a credible threat to his safety." "That's ridiculous," Serafina said. "Maybe, but a judge granted it. You can't go within 500 feet of him, can't contact him, can't access any shared properties." "The penthouse," Serafina whispered. Marcus nodded. "He's having the locks changed as we speak. Everything you left there is being moved to storage. You'll get a list of locations within 48 hours. Serafina felt the last piece of ground beneath her feet crumble away. The penthouse, her clothes, her mother's jewelry, the photo albums from before her marriage turned toxic. All of it gone. All of it in Damien's control. "This isn't happening," she said. "This can't be happening." But it was. Damien had systematically dismantled every advantage they had, turned their strongest witness, shifted the narrative, taken control of their shared assets, and now he was making sure Serafina couldn't even get close enough to fight back. "We need a new strategy," Lucian said. "We need a miracle," Marcus corrected. Serafina walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the world was white and silent and completely indifferent to her pain. 6 years ago, she'd married Damien Crowe believing he was her future. 3 months ago, she'd decided to destroy him. And now she was losing, not just losing, being obliterated. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "You wanted to play games with a predator. Now you know what it feels like to be prey." She showed it to her father. Lucian read it, and his jaw tightened. "Block the number." "He'll just use another one. Then we'll block that one too, and the next one, and the one after that." "That's not a solution, Dad. That's just delaying the inevitable." "What else do you want me to do, Serafina? Tell me, because I'm running out of moves." The admission hung between them. Her father, the man who always had a plan, who always saw 3 steps ahead, who'd spent his entire life outmaneuvering people twice his size, was out of moves. They were losing, and Damien knew it. The press conference happened the next morning. Serafina watched it on the news. Couldn't look away, even though every word felt like a knife between her ribs. Damien stood on the courthouse steps surrounded by lawyers, looking tired but dignified. The wounded husband, the wronged man. He'd always been good at playing roles. "I want to address the allegations that have been made against me," he began. His voice was steady, controlled. "For the past several months, I've been the target of a coordinated attack by my estranged wife and her father. They used their connections to launch a baseless federal investigation. They bribed witnesses to fabricate evidence. They destroyed my business and my reputation." The cameras clicked and flashed. "But the truth is coming out now. My legal team has obtained sworn testimony proving that these allegations were manufactured, that the witnesses were coerced, that the entire investigation was built on lies." Serafina's hands clenched into fists. "I don't say this with any satisfaction," Damien continued. "Serafina and I were married for 6 years. I loved her once. I wanted to build a life with her. But somewhere along the way she changed, became vindictive, cruel. When our marriage ended, she couldn't accept it, so she tried to destroy me instead." "Liar," Serafina whispered at the screen. "I'm not here seeking revenge. I'm here seeking justice. Not just for myself, but for everyone who's been falsely accused. Everyone who's had their lives torn apart by malicious allegations." He paused. "Let the moment breathe. I'm calling on federal prosecutors to investigate Serafina Vale and Lucian Vale for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. No one should be above the law, not even the wealthy and connected." The reporters erupted with questions. Damien smiled sadly and walked away, surrounded by his legal team. The camera cut back to the studio where talking heads began dissecting every word. Serafina turned off the television. The room was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. She sat there for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just breathing. In and out. In and out. Eventually, her father found her. He didn't say anything, just sat in the chair across from her and handed her a glass of water. She drank it without tasting it. "We could run," Lucian said quietly. "Leave the country. I have resources. Places where even federal investigators can't reach. That's not a solution. That's exile. Sometimes exile is better than prison." Serafina looked at him. Really looked at him. Her father had aged 10 years in the past week. Gray shadows under his eyes, new lines around his mouth, the weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. She'd done this to him, by asking for his help, by dragging him into her war with Damien. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't. I should have just taken the divorce, walked away with whatever scraps he offered. We'd both be fine now. You'd be broken, and I'd have failed you." Lucian leaned forward. "I have one daughter. One. And I will burn this entire world to ash before I let Damien Crowe send you to prison." "Then what do we do?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "We find something on him that's worse than anything we've already found. Something so damaging that he has no choice but to back down." "We've already looked. We've searched everything." "Then we look harder." Serafina wanted to believe him, wanted to think there was still a way out of this nightmare, but she'd seen Damien's face on those courthouse steps. He wasn't going to stop, not until one of them was destroyed completely. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of lawyers and depositions and emergency motions. Serafina barely slept, barely ate, just moved from room to room in her father's house like a ghost haunting her own life. Federal investigators wanted to interview her. Her father's lawyers said absolutely not without immunity guarantees first. The prosecutors said no immunity without cooperation. Round and round in circles that led nowhere. Meanwhile, Damien's countersuit gained momentum. More witnesses came forward, people Serafina had never met, claiming she'd tried to bribe them too, claiming she'd made threats, claiming she'd orchestrated a conspiracy. All lies. But lies told loudly enough start to sound like truth. On the fourth day, Marcus knocked on her bedroom door. "You have a visitor," he said. "I'm not seeing anyone." "You'll want to see this one." Serafina followed him downstairs, too tired to argue. A woman stood in the foyer, mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by anything. "Ms. Vale," the woman said, "my name is Catherine Reeves. I'm a federal prosecutor." Serafina's heart stopped. "I'm not answering questions without my lawyer." "I'm not here to question you. I'm here to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" Catherine pulled an envelope from her briefcase. "Your husband made a mistake, a big one, and I need your help to prove it." Serafina took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, bank transfers, emails. Her breath caught. "What is this?" "Evidence that Damien Crowe has been paying Vivian Mercer to recant her testimony. $2 million, transferred yesterday through an offshore account we've been monitoring." Serafina stared at the papers. "He bribed her." "Yes. Which means her new testimony is perjury, which means your original case is back on the table." Catherine's expression was hard. "I don't like being lied to, Ms. Vale, and I really don't like when suspects try to manipulate federal investigations. So what do you need from me?" "I need you to testify, under oath, about everything, your marriage, the hidden assets, Damien's attempts to intimidate you, all of it. And if I do, then we drop any investigation into you and your father, full immunity, and we go after Damien Crowe with everything we have." Serafina looked at the photographs again. Damien's signature on transfer documents, account numbers, dates and times proving he'd paid Vivian off the same day she recanted. He'd gotten sloppy, desperate, and desperate men made mistakes. "I'll testify," Serafina said. Catherine nodded. "Good. We'll need you in 2 days. Federal courthouse, 9 a.m. Bring your lawyer and be ready for a long day." She left. Serafina stood in the foyer holding the envelope like it was made of glass. This was it. The break they needed. Proof that Damien had committed a federal crime. That he'd obstructed justice. That everything he'd said on those courthouse steps was a lie. She found her father in the study and showed him the evidence. For the first time in days, Lucian smiled. "He's finished," he said. Not yet, but soon. Serafina allowed herself one moment of relief, one breath where the weight on her chest lifted slightly, and then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it anyway. Congratulations, Damien said. You found my payment to Vivian. Serafina's blood went cold. How did you? Because I wanted you to find it. That account? Those transfers? I set them up specifically for federal investigators to discover. That doesn't make any sense, doesn't it? Think about it, Sarah. Why would I be stupid enough to pay off a witness using traceable accounts? Why would I leave such an obvious trail? Understanding hit her like a freight train. You're setting me up. Not you. Your father. Damien's voice was poison. Those transfers came from accounts connected to Lucian Vale Financial Holdings. Accounts I gained access to 6 months ago when we were still sharing assets. The paper trail leads straight to your father, not to me. That's impossible. Is it? Or did your father get so desperate to save you that he committed a federal crime? Serafina couldn't breathe. You're lying. Am I? Ask him. Ask Lucien if he has any accounts he forgot to mention, any holdings he kept secret, any financial exposure that could be used against him. The line went dead. Serafina turned to her father slowly. His face had gone white. Dad? I need to make a call, he said. Dad, what is he talking about? I said, I need to make a call. He left the room. Serafina stood there, the envelope still in her hands, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet one more time. What had her father done? What had he risked to protect her? And how badly had Damien just beaten them? What? The answer came 30 minutes later. Lucian returned to the study with Marcus at his side. Both men looked like they'd aged a decade. Sit down, Lucian said. I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me what's going on. Sit. Down. Serafina sat. Her father moved to the window, stood with his back to her. His shoulders were rigid. His hands were clenched behind his back. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 6 months ago, Damien approached me, said he wanted to discuss your marriage, said he thought you two could work things out if we just talked privately. And you believed him? I thought it was worth a conversation. So I met with him, had a drink, talked about business, about family, about the future. What did he do? He convinced me to invest in one of his shell companies, said it was a legitimate real estate holding, showed me documents, contracts. Everything looked clean. Serafina's stomach dropped. Oh no. I didn't know the account was being used for money laundering. I didn't know he was moving stolen assets through it. I just thought I was making an investment. But the paper trail leads straight to me, my signature, my accounts, my money. Lucien finally turned to face her. Damien set this trap 6 months ago, long before you ever decided to come after him. He knew this day would come. And he made sure that when it did, I'd be the one who went down for his crimes. Serafina couldn't speak. Her father, the most careful, most calculating person she knew, had walked straight into Damien's trap. So when federal investigators trace those transfers to Vivian, she said slowly, they'll find your accounts, your name, your signature. Yes. And they'll think you bribed her, that you orchestrated everything. Yes. And I'll be implicated because I'm your daughter. Lucien closed his eyes. Yes. The room was silent except for the sound of Serafina's heart hammering against her ribs. Damien hadn't just won. He'd destroyed them both. With one move, he'd turned their strongest evidence into proof of their guilt, made them look like desperate criminals willing to commit federal crimes, ensured that even if they tried to fight back, the legal system would crush them first. We're finished, Serafina whispered. Not yet, Marcus said. There's still one option. What option? We have nothing left. We have the truth, and we have people who know it. Like who? Vivian? She's already proven she'll say whatever Damien pays her to say. Not Vivian, Marcus said. Damien's business partner, the one who disappeared when the investigation started. Serafina looked up. Ethan Morrison. He knows everything. The real accounting, the actual money trails, the evidence Damien thinks he buried. Ethan's been missing for 2 weeks. Nobody knows where he is. I do, Marcus said quietly. He's in Montreal, and he's willing to talk, but only if we guarantee his safety. Serafina looked at her father. Can we do that? Lucian's jaw was tight. We can try. That's not an answer, Dad. Can we actually protect him from Damien? I don't know, but it's the only move we have left. Serafina stood up. Her legs were shaking, but they held. Then let's make it, she said. Because if they didn't, if they just surrendered now, then Damien won everything. Her marriage, her dignity, her freedom, her father's life. All of it. And Serafina Vale was done losing. Even if it meant risking everything on one final, desperate play. Even if it meant admitting that she'd underestimated her enemy from the very beginning. Even if it meant accepting that sometimes patience wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to bet everything you had left on a single hand and pray the cards fell your way. Montreal was freezing in December. Serafina stepped off the private jet onto a tarmac slick with ice, the wind cutting through her coat like it had teeth. Marcus was beside her, his hand on her elbow to keep her steady. Behind them, two of her father's security team carried equipment cases that definitely didn't contain camera gear. Lucien had stayed behind. Too risky, he'd said. If Damien's people were watching, and they almost certainly were, then Lucien Vale crossing into Canada would send up flares visible from space. But Serafina could move quietly. She was still just the scorned wife, still just the collateral damage. Damien wouldn't expect her to come herself. That was the theory anyway. The SUV waiting for them had diplomatic plates and windows tinted dark enough to be illegal in most states. Marcus opened the back door and she climbed in without a word. The interior smelled like leather and gun oil. How far? She asked. 40 minutes. Maybe less if traffic cooperates. And Ethan knows we're coming? He knows someone's coming. I didn't tell him who. The fewer people who know you're here, the better. Serafina nodded and stared out the window as Montreal rolled past. Gray buildings, gray sky, gray snow piled along the curbs like dirty memories. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Could feel the exhaustion in her bones, in the way her thoughts kept slipping sideways, in the tremor in her hands that wouldn't quite stop. But she couldn't afford to be tired. Not now. Not when everything depended on the next 6 hours. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. Stay safe. Call when it's done. She didn't respond. Just tucked the phone away and focused on breathing. In and out. In and out. Like her mother used to teach her before piano recitals when she was 8 years old and thought stage fright was the worst thing that could happen to a person. God, she'd been naive. The safe house was in old Montreal, tucked between a bookstore and a cafe that looked like it hadn't opened since 1987. Marcus led her through a narrow alley to a steel door with no handle and knocked 3 times. The door opened. A man in his 30s stood there, military build, scar through his left eyebrow, the kind of eyes that had seen people die and stopped caring about it. One of her father's people. She didn't know his name. Didn't need to. Upstairs, he said. 2nd floor. Knocked twice. They climbed stairs that creaked under their weight. The building smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. Somewhere above them, a baby was crying. 2nd floor. Door on the right. Serafina knocked twice. It's open. The voice was hoarse, frightened. She pushed the door open and stepped into a studio apartment that looked like someone had furnished it from a thrift store in 1992. Sagging couch, card table, kitchenette with a hot plate and a mini fridge that hummed too loud. Ethan Morrison sat at the card table with a laptop in front of him and a bottle of whiskey beside it. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, 20 pounds lighter than his press photos. His hands shook as he reached for the whiskey. "You're Serafina," he said. "I am." "Jesus, I didn't think you'd come yourself." "I needed to hear it from you directly. No intermediaries, no recordings. Just the truth." Ethan laughed. Sounded like breaking glass. "The truth, yeah, the truth is going to get us both killed." "Damien doesn't know where you are." "Doesn't he? Because 3 days ago, someone broke into my girlfriend's apartment in Chicago, tore the place apart, left a message written on her bathroom mirror in lipstick. We know you're protecting him." Serafina's stomach turned. "Is she okay?" "She's terrified. I told her to go stay with her parents in Ohio. Haven't heard from her since." Ethan took a long pull from the whiskey bottle. "That's what Damien does. He doesn't come for you directly. He goes after everyone you love until you have no choice but to come to him." "Then help me stop him." "How? You think testimony is going to fix this? You think some federal prosecutor is going to take down Damien Crowe based on my word?" "If we have evidence, yes. I have evidence." Ethan turned the laptop toward her. 5 years of accounting records. Real numbers. Not the doctored bullshit Damien filed with the SEC. Proof he's been running a pyramid scheme disguised as a shipping company. Proof he embezzled from his own investors. Proof he laundered money through offshore accounts and shell corporations across 3 continents. Serafina leaned closer. The spreadsheets made her head hurt. Columns of numbers, transaction codes, account names that meant nothing to her, but someone would understand them. Someone who could translate this into a federal indictment. "Can I have a copy?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. "If I give you this, I'm dead. You understand that? Damien will know it came from me. He'll hunt me down and—" "He won't. Because by the time this becomes public, he'll be in federal custody, and you'll have immunity." "You can't guarantee that." "No, but I can try." Serafina pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "Ethan, listen to me. I know you're scared. I know you think running is the only option. But if we don't stop Damien now, if we let him keep doing this, he's going to destroy more lives, more businesses, more people. Why should I care? I didn't sign up to be a hero. Neither did I. But here we are." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thumb drive. "Everything's on here," he said. "Transaction records, email chains, recorded phone calls where Damien explicitly ordered me to falsify accounting reports, enough to put him away for 20 years. Serafina took the drive like it was made of dynamite. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Getting that information out of Canada and into federal hands without Damien intercepting it, that's going to be the hard part. We have a plan." "Yeah? What plan?" Marcus spoke from the doorway. "We leak it first, to the press. Every major news outlet simultaneously. By the time Damien knows what's happening, it'll be too viral to suppress." Ethan's eyes widened. "That's insane." "It's the only way," Serafina said. "If we go straight to federal prosecutors, Damien's lawyers will bury it in motions and delays for months. But if it's already public, if journalists are writing stories and the public is demanding answers, then prosecutors have no choice but to act immediately. And if it backfires? If Damien spins it as more manufactured evidence? Then we lose. But if we don't try, we've already lost." Ethan looked down at his hands. They were still shaking. "I have one condition," he said. "Name it." "My girlfriend. I need her protected. Not just security. I need her completely off the grid until this is over. Done." "I mean it, Serafina. If anything happens to her because I helped you, nothing will happen to her. You have my word." Ethan nodded slowly. Then he closed his laptop and stood up. "Okay, let's burn this bastard down." No. They worked through the night. Marcus had brought a journalist with him, someone Lucian trusted, someone who'd broken major corruption stories before and knew how to handle explosive material. Her name was Andrea Chen, and she looked like she survived on coffee and righteous anger. She went through Ethan's files with the focus of a surgeon, asking questions, verifying sources, building a narrative that would survive legal scrutiny. Serafina sat on the couch and watched, too wired to sleep, too exhausted to help. Around 3 a.m., Andrea looked up. "This is Pulitzer-level stuff. If even half of it checks out, Damien Crowe is finished." "How soon can you publish?" Marcus asked. "I need 48 hours to verify sources and get legal clearance from my editors." "We don't have 48 hours. Then you're asking me to publish something that could be challenged as defamation. That could get my paper sued into oblivion. Or it could expose one of the biggest financial frauds of the decade," Serafina said. "Your choice." Andrea studied her. "You really hate him, don't you?" "I really want him to face consequences for what he's done. There's a difference." "Is there?" But Andrea was already pulling out her phone. "I'll call my editor, see if we can fast-track this, but I'm not promising anything." She walked into the kitchenette to make the call. Ethan sat down next to Serafina. "You okay?" "No, but I will be, once this is over." "And if it doesn't work? If Damien finds a way out?" "Then I tried. That's more than I can say for the last 6 years of my life." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "He used to be different, you know. When I first started working for him, he was intense but fair, ambitious but honest. Then something changed. Like a switch flipped. He started cutting corners, making deals that didn't make sense, lying to investors." "When?" "About 4 years ago, right after you two got married." Serafina's chest tightened. "You think I changed him?" "I think marriage scared him, made him realize he couldn't control everything, so he doubled down on the things he could control. Money, power, reputation." Ethan shook his head. I should have quit then. Should have seen where it was heading, but the money was good and I convinced myself I was just doing my job. We all make compromises. Yeah, but some compromises cost more than others. Andrea came back into the room. My editor says yes, but we need everything verified by morning. That means I'm spending the rest of the night on the phone with forensic accountants and legal experts. Whatever you need, Serafina said. I need you to go get some sleep. You look like you're about to pass out. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running on adrenaline and spite, both of which are going to run out soon. Andrea pointed at the bedroom. Go, sleep. I'll wake you if anything changes. Serafina wanted to argue, but her body was already shutting down. Her eyes burned. Her head throbbed. Every muscle ached. She walked into the bedroom and collapsed onto the mattress without bothering to take off her shoes. Sleep came like a hammer. Borstet. She woke to shouting. Serafina sat up, disoriented, her heart hammering. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Morning. How long had she been out? The shouting got louder. She stumbled out of the bedroom and found Marcus and Andrea arguing in the kitchenette while Ethan paced near the window. What's going on? Marcus turned. His expression was grim. Damien knows you're here. The words hit her like ice water. That's impossible. Apparently not. His lawyers filed an emergency motion an hour ago claiming you fled the country to avoid prosecution. They're asking for your passport to be revoked, for federal marshals to bring you back. How did he know I left? Someone at the airport probably, or someone monitoring your father's planes. Doesn't matter now. What matters is we're out of time. Andrea stepped forward. My editor is publishing in 3 hours, but if federal marshals show up before then, they won't, Serafina said. We're in Canada. They have no jurisdiction here. They don't need jurisdiction if the Canadian authorities cooperate, and Damien has friends everywhere. Ethan stopped pacing. We need to leave, now, before this place gets surrounded. Where would we go? Serafina asked. There's a border crossing 2 hours north, small, remote, less likely to be monitored. We can get into Vermont, then drive to Boston, lose ourselves in a city until this blows over. Marcus shook his head. That's running. We came here to fight. And we got what we needed. The files are with Andrea. The story's being published. Serafina staying here doesn't help anyone. Staying here keeps her out of federal custody. For how long? A day? A week? Eventually Canada will extradite her, and then Damien wins. They were both right. Serafina could feel the walls closing in. Every option led to a dead end. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it even though she knew she shouldn't. Hello, Sarah. Damien's voice was smooth, almost cheerful. How did you get this number? I get everything eventually. You should know that by now. He paused. I know where you are. Old Montreal, safe house on Rue Saint-Paul, second floor above a bookstore that hasn't opened since the 90s. Serafina's blood ran cold. She looked at Marcus, mouthed, He knows. Marcus's hand moved to the gun under his jacket. What do you want, Damien? I want you to come home. Turn yourself in. Face the charges like an adult. There are no charges. I haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you? Conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, fleeing prosecution. That's 3 federal charges right there, plus whatever other crimes your father committed on your behalf. My father is innocent. Is he? Because I have documentation proving he paid Vivian Mercer $2 million to lie under oath. I have his signature, his bank accounts, his fingerprints all over a federal crime. You fabricated that evidence. Did I? Or did your father get so desperate to protect you that he crossed a line he can't uncross? Damien's voice dropped lower. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get on a plane, fly back to Chicago, present yourself to federal prosecutors with your lawyers, and you're going to plead guilty to conspiracy. I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do. Then your father goes to prison instead. Your choice. The line went dead. Serafina stood there, the phone shaking in her hand. What did he say? Marcus asked. He said if I don't turn myself in, he's going after my father. He's bluffing? Is he? Because he already set up the evidence, already made it look like my father bribed Vivian. One phone call to the right prosecutor, and Lucien Vale gets arrested. Your father has lawyers. Lawyers can't fight fabricated evidence that looks real. You know that. I know that. And Damien knows that. Serafina sank into a chair. He's been 3 steps ahead this entire time. Every move we made, he predicted. Every trap we set, he turned into a weapon against us. Ethan moved closer. What are you going to do? I don't know. Andrea's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. The story's going live in 30 minutes. My editor just sent me the headline. Shipping magnate Damian Crowe accused of massive financial fraud. 30 minutes? Serafina looked up. That's too soon. We're not ready. We don't have a choice. Another outlet got wind of the story. If we don't publish now, someone else breaks it first and we lose control of the narrative. Serafina's mind raced. 30 minutes until the story went public. 30 minutes until Damian's world exploded. But would it be enough? Or would he find a way to spin it, to blame her, to make himself look like the victim again? She pulled out her phone and called her father. He answered on the first ring. Where are you? Still in Montreal. Dad, the story's publishing in 30 minutes. But Damian knows I'm here. He called. Threatened to have you arrested if I don't turn myself in. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Come home. What? Come home, Serafina. Let me handle this. I'm not letting you go to prison for me. And I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for my mistakes. I'm the one who walked into Damian's trap. I'm the one whose name is on those accounts. This is my responsibility. Dad, listen to me. When that story publishes, all hell is going to break loose. Damian will fight back. He'll file motions. He'll call in favors. He'll do everything he can to discredit the reporting. But while he's focused on that, I'm going to federal prosecutors myself. I'm going to explain exactly what happened. How Damian manipulated me into investing in his shell company. How he forged documents. How he set this trap. They won't believe you. Maybe not. But I have resources too. I have forensic experts who can prove those signatures were forged. I have witnesses who can testify about Damian's history of manipulation. And most importantly, I have time. Because once that story publishes, Damian loses his leverage. He can't threaten to expose you when you're already exposed. Serafina felt tears burning behind her eyes. I can't let you do this. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do it because you're my daughter, and I will never stop protecting you. The line went quiet except for the sound of both of them breathing. I love you, Dad. I love you too. Now come home, and let's finish this. The drive to the border took 2 hours through snow that came down like static. Serafina sat in the back of the SUV with her phone in her hand, refreshing the news site every 30 seconds, waiting for the story to drop. 20 minutes. 15. 10. At 11:03 a.m., the headline appeared. Exclusive. Federal documents reveal shipping magnate Damian Crowe's decade of financial fraud. Serafina's hands shook as she read. Andrea had done her job. The story was devastating. Transaction records, testimony from Ethan Morrison, recorded phone calls where Damian explicitly ordered accounting fraud, evidence of embezzlement, money laundering, investor fraud, all of it laid out in meticulous detail. The comments section exploded within minutes, thousands of people demanding answers, demanding arrests, demanding justice. Her phone rang. Her father. It's live, she said. I see it. I'm on my way to the federal building now. My lawyers are already negotiating immunity in exchange for my cooperation. What do I do? You come home. Walk through the front door. Don't hide. Don't run. Show them you have nothing to be afraid of. And Damian? Let him drown. They crossed the border at 2:47 p.m. The customs agent barely glanced at her passport before waving them through. American soil. Serafina felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief. Not yet. But something close to it. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but she did. You think you won, Damian said. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. You think publishing that hit piece changes anything? It changes everything. Does it? Because my lawyers are already drafting defamation suits. I'm holding a press conference in 2 hours. By tonight, the narrative shifts. You'll be the vindictive ex-wife who fabricated evidence, and I'll be the innocent victim fighting back. No one's going to believe that. Won't they? I've been controlling narratives for a decade, Sarah. You think some newspaper story is going to destroy me? I think federal investigators are going to destroy you. They're already executing search warrants, freezing your accounts, bringing in your business partners for questioning. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm not going to prison. You don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. His voice went cold. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. You and your father, I'll make sure you both spend the rest of your lives in court. Broke, destroyed, forgotten. You can try. I don't try, Sarah. I succeed. You should have learned that by now. The line went dead. Serafina set down the phone and stared out the window as Vermont rolled past. Bare trees, gray sky, the landscape looked dead. But winter always looked dead. Spring came eventually. You just had to survive long enough to see it. Oh, Chicago felt different when they landed at O'Hare 6 hours later. Colder, harder, like the city itself was bracing for impact. Marcus had arranged for a car to meet them at a private terminal. No press, no cameras. Just a quiet exit into the industrial sprawl south of the airport. Serafina's phone had been blowing up for hours. Calls from reporters, lawyers, people she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanting statements. She ignored all of them. The only call she answered was from her father. "Where are you?" she asked. "Federal building, still giving my statement. It's going to be a long night." "Are they charging you?" "Not yet. My lawyers are good. And once they see the evidence proving Damien forged those signatures, they'll realize I'm a victim, not a co-conspirator." "And me?" "They want to interview you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Your lawyers will be there." "What should I expect?" "Questions. Lots of them. They'll want to know everything. How you met Damien, what you knew about his business, why you didn't report your suspicions earlier. Be honest. Be thorough. And don't let them intimidate you." "I won't." "Serafina." His voice softened. "We're going to get through this." "I know." She didn't know, but she said it anyway. Because sometimes you had to lie to yourself to keep moving forward. The car pulled up to the Vale Estate at 9:47 p.m. The gates opened silently, and they drove up the long driveway toward the house. Home. Serafina climbed out of the car and stood in the cold for a moment, breathing in the night air. It smelled like snow and pine and something else she couldn't name. Freedom, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. Marcus appeared beside her. "You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." "I'm not sure I remember how to sleep anymore." "Try anyway. You'll need your strength." She walked into the house. Marcus followed, along with the security team her father had insisted on. They spread out through the first floor, checking windows, locking doors, making sure nothing could get through. Serafina climbed the stairs to her old bedroom and found it exactly as she'd left it. Untouched. Preserved like a museum. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears that rolled down her face and dripped onto her hands. 6 years. 6 years of marriage that had slowly destroyed her. 6 months of fighting back. And now she was here, waiting to see if justice was real or just another lie people told themselves to sleep at night. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but something made her open it. "I'm outside." Serafina's blood went cold. She walked to the window and looked down at the driveway. A silver Aston Martin sat at the gate. Damien. He'd come here, to her father's estate, despite the restraining order, despite the security, despite everything. He'd come to finish this. Serafina grabbed her phone and ran downstairs. Marcus met her in the foyer. "What's wrong?" "Damien's at the gate." His expression hardened. "Stay inside. Let the security team handle it." "No, this ends now." "Serafina, I'm not hiding anymore. If he wants to talk, then we talk. Out in the open, with witnesses, where he can't twist it into something it's not." Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'm coming with you." They walked out together. The security team flanked them, hands on weapons, ready for anything. The gate stood between them and Damien's car. Through the iron bars, Serafina could see him sitting behind the wheel, just sitting there, watching. She pressed the intercom button. "What do you want?" Damien's voice came through the speaker. "To talk. We have nothing to talk about." "We have everything to talk about, unless you want this to get uglier than it already is." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you a deal." Marcus stepped closer to the intercom. "Mr. Crow, you're in violation of a restraining order. Leave now or I'm calling the police." "Call them. I'll be gone before they arrive, but this opportunity won't be." Serafina looked at Marcus. "Open the gate." "That's a bad idea." "Do it anyway." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. 30 seconds later, the gates began to swing open. Damien drove through slowly and parked in the center of the circular driveway. He got out of the car with his hands raised, showing he wasn't armed. He looked terrible. unshaven, exhausted. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. This was what losing looked like on Damien Crowe. Say what you came to say, Serafina told him. Drop the charges. Retract your testimony. Convince your father to do the same. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I release everything. Everything? Photos, videos, emails, every ugly moment of our marriage, every fight, every time you fell apart, every time you needed medication just to get out of bed. His smile was cruel. I'll show the world what you really are. Not some brave survivor fighting back, just a broken woman who couldn't handle being married to someone more successful than her. Serafina felt the words hit her like physical blows. But she didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't give him the satisfaction. Go ahead, she said quietly. Release it all. Show them how you systematically destroyed my mental health over 6 years. Show them the texts where you told me I was worthless. The voicemails where you screamed at me. The times you locked me out of our bedroom. Go ahead, Damien. Let the world see what kind of husband you really were. His smile faltered. You think you're the only one who documented everything? Serafina continued. I have my own records, my own proof. And unlike you, I don't need to blackmail anyone to get justice. The evidence speaks for itself. You're bluffing. Am I? Try me. They stood there, 10 feet apart, staring at each other across an ocean of wreckage. Finally, Damien laughed. It sounded hollow, defeated. You really think you've won? I think you've already lost. You just haven't accepted it yet. We'll see. He walked back to his car, opened the door, paused. I loved you once, you know, before you turned into this. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me, the version of me that stayed quiet and made you look good. The real me? You never even tried to know her. Damien got in his car without another word. He drove out through the gates and disappeared into the night. Serafina stood there, shaking, barely holding herself together. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. You okay? No, but I will be. They walked back inside together, and for the first time in 6 years, Serafina felt like she could breathe without something crushing her chest. The war wasn't over, not yet. But she'd just won the most important battle, the one where she stopped being afraid. The federal courthouse on Dearborn Street looked like a temple built to intimidate. Serafina stood on the steps at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early for her interview, watching the morning commuters flow past like they were part of a river that never stopped moving. Nobody looked at her. Nobody cared. In a city of 3 million people, she was just another woman in a black coat climbing courthouse steps. That anonymity felt like armor. Her lawyers flanked her, 2 men and a woman, all of them carrying briefcases that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They'd spent 3 hours the night before preparing her for every possible question, every trap, every angle federal prosecutors might use to trip her up. Just tell the truth, the lead attorney had said. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't elaborate, don't speculate, don't try to be helpful. Serafina had nodded and wondered when telling the truth had become a tactical decision instead of a moral imperative. They went through security, metal detectors, X-ray machines, a guard who looked at her ID like he was memorizing her face in case she turned out to be someone important later. Conference room 4B was on the 3rd floor. Gray walls, gray table, gray chairs. The only color came from the American flag in the corner and a window that overlooked the parking garage. 2 federal prosecutors waited inside. A man in his 50s with silver hair and a woman in her 30s who looked like she survived on ambition and spite. Between them sat a court reporter, fingers poised over her stenotype machine. Mrs. Crowe, the man said. Thank you for coming. It's Ms. Vale now, Serafina corrected. I'm reverting to my maiden name. Of course, Ms. Vale. I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Hammond. This is my colleague, Jennifer Park. We have some questions about your husband's business dealings. Ex-husband. The divorce was finalized 3 days ago. That wasn't true yet, but it would be soon. Damien had signed the papers after his lawyers explained that fighting the divorce while facing federal charges would make him look vindictive instead of victimized. Some battles you had to surrender to win the war. Hammond gestured to a chair. Please, sit. The interview lasted 4 hours. They asked about everything, how she and Damien met, when she first suspected something was wrong, what access she had to his files, whether she'd ever questioned his business practices, why she waited so long to come forward. Serafina answered every question the same way, calmly, precisely. without emotion. She told them about the affairs, the hidden accounts, the shell corporation she'd discovered. The moment she saw Damien kiss Vivian Mercer outside the cafe and realized her marriage was a lie built on other lies. She told them about her father's inadvertent involvement, how Damien had manipulated Lucien into investing in a shell company, how the trap had been set 6 months before the investigation even began. She told them about Ethan Morrison and the evidence he'd provided, about the recordings and transaction records and emails that proved Damien had been orchestrating financial fraud for years. And when they asked if she'd coordinated with federal investigators before the official investigation began, she looked Hammond straight in the eye and said, "No, I discovered the evidence and I reported it. That's what citizens are supposed to do when they uncover crimes." Hammond made notes. Park asked follow-up questions. The stenographer's fingers never stopped moving. By the time they finished, it was past noon. Serafina's throat was raw from talking. Her hands ached from gripping the armrests of her chair. "Thank you for your cooperation," Hammond said. "We'll be in touch if we need anything else." "Am I being charged with anything?" "Not at this time. Based on your testimony and the evidence we've reviewed, we believe you're a witness, not a co-conspirator." "And my father?" "We're still reviewing his involvement, but it appears Mr. Crow deliberately manipulated him. That changes the calculus significantly." Serafina stood on shaking legs. Her lawyers gathered their materials, and they walked out together. Through the gray hallways, past the security checkpoints, down the courthouse steps into afternoon light that felt too bright after 4 hours of fluorescent interrogation. A crowd of reporters waited at the bottom of the steps. They surged forward the moment they saw her, shouting questions, shoving microphones and recording devices toward her face like weapons. "Ms. Vale, how do you respond to your husband's claims that you fabricated evidence? Did you coordinate with your father to frame Damien Crow? Are you seeking financial gain from this investigation? Do you have any regrets about your marriage?" Serafina's lead attorney stepped forward. "My client has no comment at this time. Please respect her privacy." But Serafina put a hand on his arm. "It's okay." She looked at the cameras, at the reporters, at the dozens of people watching her with hungry eyes, and she spoke. "I spent 6 years married to a man who made me believe I was worthless, who told me every day that I was nothing without him, who slowly destroyed my sense of self until I barely recognized my own reflection." Her voice was steady, clear. "So when people ask if I have regrets, my answer is yes. I regret not leaving sooner. I regret believing his lies for so long. I regret all the ways I made myself smaller so he could feel bigger." The crowd was silent now. Even the reporters had stopped shouting. "But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret exposing the truth. And I don't regret reminding myself that I was dangerous long before I became his wife." She took a breath. "That's all I have to say." She walked down the steps. The crowd parted. Her lawyers followed. Nobody tried to stop her. Behind her, she could hear the reporters already calling their editors, already writing tomorrow's headlines, already turning her words into content that would fill the 24-hour news cycle until something more interesting came along. That was fine. Let them write whatever they wanted. She'd told her truth. The rest was just noise. Damien's trial began 3 weeks later. Serafina didn't attend. Her lawyers advised against it, said her presence would be seen as provocative, would give Damien's defense team ammunition to paint her as vindictive rather than victimized. But she watched the coverage every night. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Transaction records, testimony from Ethan Morrison, recorded phone calls where Damien explicitly ordered accounting fraud, expert witnesses who explained in painful detail how he'd embezzled from investors, laundered money through offshore accounts, and built a financial empire on lies. Damien's lawyers fought back hard. They called character witnesses. They presented alternative interpretations of the evidence. They tried to shift blame to subordinates. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the recordings. On the 7th day of testimony, Vivian Mercer took the stand. Serafina watched from her father's study as Vivian was sworn in, her hand trembling as she placed it on the Bible and promised to tell the truth. The prosecutor approached. "Ms. Mercer, you previously testified that Mr. Crow's wife and father-in-law coerced you into providing false evidence. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And is that testimony true?" Vivian was silent for a long moment. She looked at the judge, at the jury, at Damien sitting at the defense table. Then she looked at the camera. "No," she said quietly. "That testimony was false. Damian Crowe paid me $2 million to recant my original statement. He told me if I didn't lie for him, he'd make sure I went to prison for money laundering. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Damian's lawyers immediately requested a recess. The prosecutor looked like someone had handed him a gift, wrapped in courtroom gold. Serafina sat back in her chair and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Vivian had told the truth. Finally, after everything, she'd told the truth. The trial lasted another week. Closing arguments, jury deliberations, the agonizing wait while 12 strangers decided Damian's fate. Serafina spent those days at her father's estate, trying to remember what normal life felt like. She went for walks in the frozen gardens, read books she'd been meaning to read for years, cooked meals for herself and her father when he came home from his own meetings with federal prosecutors. Lucien had been cleared of all charges. The forensic analysis proved the signatures on the investment documents were sophisticated forgeries. Expert testimony confirmed he'd been manipulated, not complicit, but the experience had aged him. Serafina could see it in the new lines around his eyes, in the way he moved slower now, like he was carrying weight that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry," she told him one night over dinner. "For what? For dragging you into this, for putting you at risk, for—" "Stop." Lucien set down his fork. "You didn't drag me into anything. I chose to help you, and I'd make the same choice again. Even knowing how it turned out, especially knowing how it turned out, because you're free now, and that's all that matters." Serafina felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." "For what?" "For remembering who I was when I forgot." Lucien reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're my daughter. I never forgot, even when you tried to make me." They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Outside, snow began to fall again. The verdict came down on a Tuesday afternoon. Serafina was in the library when her phone rang. Her lawyer. She answered with her heart in her throat. "Guilty," he said, "on all counts." The relief hit her like a wave. She sat down hard in the nearest chair. "All of them?" "Every single charge. Wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, investor fraud, obstruction of justice." The jury didn't buy any of his defense. "How long?" "Sentencing won't be for another month, but we're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum." 15 to 20 years. Damian would be in his 60s when he got out. If he got out. Men like him didn't survive prison well. They were too used to control, too dependent on the scaffolding of power and money and influence. Take all that away and they crumbled. "Ms. Vale? You still there?" "I'm here. Thank you for letting me know." She hung up and sat in the quiet library, listening to the house settle around her. It was over. After 6 years of marriage and 6 months of war, it was finally over. She expected to feel victorious, triumphant, something big and dramatic. But what she felt was tired, just bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. Her father found her an hour later, still sitting in the same chair, staring at nothing. "I heard," he said. "Good. Are you okay?" Serafina thought about that. Was she okay? Would she ever be okay? "I don't know," she said honestly. "Ask me in a year." Lucien sat down beside her. They didn't talk, just sat together while the afternoon light faded and the house grew dark around them. Eventually, Marcus appeared with tea. Neither of them had asked for. He set the cups down without a word and disappeared again. Serafina wrapped her hands around the warm porcelain and let the heat sink into her fingers. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you heal," Lucien said. "You take time. You figure out who you are when you're not fighting." "I don't remember who that is." "Then you get to discover her. Could be interesting." Serafina almost smiled. "Could be terrifying. Most interesting things are." She drank her tea and watched snow fall past the windows. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't have to be anywhere. Didn't have to perform for anyone. Didn't have to shrink herself to fit into someone else's idea of what she should be. She could just be. That was going to take some getting used to. 3 months later, Serafina stood in front of a building in downtown Chicago with a brass plaque that read, Vale Strategic Consulting, her company, her name, her future. She'd spent the settlement money, every dollar Damian had been forced to return, building something entirely her own, a consultancy specializing in corporate recovery, crisis management, and strategic negotiation. The clients came quietly at first, a CEO whose company was drowning in scandal, a nonprofit director facing a hostile board, A woman trying to escape a powerful ex-husband who controlled all her assets. Word spread. Serafina Vale was good at taking apart empires, good at finding the weak points in structures that looked solid, good at teaching people how to fight back when they'd been taught to stay silent. She hired a small team, rented office space with windows overlooking the river, had business cards printed with just her name and a phone number. No flashy logo, no corporate jargon, just her name and the implicit promise, I survived. So can you. On her first official day, she arrived at 7 in the morning to find a package waiting on her desk. No return address. No note. Inside was a single white rose. Dead. Serafina stared at it for a long moment. Then she called Marcus. I need you to run a trace on a delivery, she said. Someone sent me a dead flower. Damien? That's what I'm assuming. He's in federal prison. Which doesn't mean he can't send messages. She took a photo of the rose and sent it to Marcus. Find out where it came from. The trace took 2 days. The package had been sent from a flower shop in Chicago 3 months ago, before Damien's sentencing, with instructions to deliver on this specific date. He'd known she'd start her company, known what day she'd open the doors. Even from a prison cell, he was still trying to control the narrative. Serafina threw the dead rose in the garbage and never mentioned it again. If Damien wanted her afraid, he'd have to try harder than wilted flowers. No. The first year of freedom was the hardest. Serafina had spent so long in survival mode that she didn't know how to function when the immediate threat was gone. She'd wake at 3 in the morning in a panic, convinced Damien had somehow escaped, that he was coming for her, that everything had been a dream, and she'd wake up still trapped in that penthouse, still married to a man who treated her like furniture. Therapy helped. So did time. She learned to recognize the difference between actual danger and the phantom pain of old trauma. Learned to sleep through the night without checking her phone every hour. Learned to trust that the locks on her doors would hold. She dated briefly. Nothing serious. A lawyer named Michael who was kind but boring. An architect named Sarah who made her laugh but wanted commitment. Serafina wasn't ready to give. She ended both relationships amicably and decided she was fine alone for now. Maybe forever. Some people needed partners. Serafina needed space. Her father's health declined slowly. Nothing catastrophic. Just the normal erosion of age accelerated by stress. He moved slower, forgot small things, spent more time sitting by the lake than working in his study. Serafina visited twice a week. They'd have dinner, play chess, talk about business and politics and everything except Damien. That chapter was closed. Neither of them wanted to reopen it. On the 2-year anniversary of Damien's conviction, Serafina received a letter. Prison stationery. Damien's handwriting. She almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter was short. Sarah, I've had a lot of time to think. About us. About what went wrong. About the choices I made that led here. I'm not going to apologize. You wouldn't believe it anyway. And honestly, I'm not sure I mean it. But I want you to know that I never meant to destroy you. I just wanted to keep you. And somewhere along the way, I confused control with love. You were right about everything. I did underestimate you. I did think you were weak. I did believe you needed me more than I needed you. I was wrong. You were always dangerous. I just never bothered to look closely enough to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you won. Completely. Totally. I have nothing left except time. And all that time is spent thinking about the woman I lost because I was too arrogant to treat her like she mattered. I hope you're happy. I mean that. Even if I'm not. Serafina read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, walked to the fireplace in her office, and burned it. She watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Some doors needed to stay closed. 5 years after the verdict, Serafina stood in the winter garden at her father's estate, the same place where her mother had once grown roses. Lucien had died 6 months earlier, peacefully, in his sleep. The kind of death everyone hoped for, and few people got. The estate was hers now, along with everything Lucien had built. The company, the investments, the carefully cultivated network of allies and connections that spanned 3 continents. She'd considered selling it, starting fresh somewhere else. But this was home. These gardens, this house, these memories. She wasn't running anymore. Snow fell softly around her as she stood among the dormant rose bushes. In a few months, they'd bloom again. Pink and white and red. Her mother's favorites. Life kept going. Even after devastation, even after loss. The Roses knew that. They died every winter and came back every spring. It was just what they did. Maybe people could do that too. Serafina's phone buzzed. A client. A woman whose husband was hiding assets, who needed someone who understood how to dismantle carefully constructed lies. She answered. "This is Serafina Vale." The woman on the other end sounded terrified. "I don't know if you can help me. I don't even know where to start." "Start at the beginning," Serafina said gently. "Tell me what happened, and then we'll figure out how to fix it." She listened as the woman talked, recognizing the story because she'd lived it herself. The gaslighting, the isolation, the slow erosion of self until you couldn't remember who you'd been before. "I can help you," Serafina said when the woman finished. "But you have to trust me, and you have to be ready to fight. Because men like your husband don't surrender easily." "I'm ready." "Good. Then let's get started." She scheduled a meeting, hung up, stood in the snow a moment longer. Somewhere across the city, Damien Crowe was serving year 5 of a 20-year sentence. His empire had been liquidated, his reputation destroyed, his name synonymous with fraud and corruption. He'd lost everything. And Serafina had built everything. Not from revenge, not from spite, from the simple understanding that survival wasn't enough. You had to do something with the life you fought so hard to reclaim. She walked back toward the house, her footprints leaving tracks in the fresh snow. Behind her, the garden waited for spring, and ahead of her, another woman waited for someone to teach her how to fight back. Serafina Vale had spent 6 years learning to be silent. Now she spent every day teaching others how to be loud. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she first saw Damien kiss Vivian Mercer outside that cafe. It was better, because she'd discovered something more powerful than revenge. She'd discovered herself. And that woman, the real Serafina Vale, not the one Damien tried to create, was more dangerous than any man who'd ever underestimated her. She was patient. She was precise. And she never forgot. Not the lessons she'd learned, not the woman she'd been, not the price she'd paid, but most importantly, she never forgot that power wasn't about being the loudest person in the room. It was about being the one who knew exactly where to strike when the moment was right. Damien Crowe thought he'd married an accessory. He'd been wrong. He'd married a weapon. He just didn't realize it until she'd already destroyed him. And as Serafina stepped into the warmth of her father's house, her house now, and closed the door against the winter cold, she smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she'd finally stopped needing to. The war was over, and she was free.